Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan Grech, and on today's episode, it's time to start designing and building a rear storage cabinet that goes in this big area where I've removed 60% of the back seat. And so there are no plans for this. This isn't a kit that I've bought off the internet. I have to make this up as I go along, design the whole thing, and figure out what I need. So if you're interested in building your own storage system for your overland vehicle, if you'd like to learn about how I build mine and how I design it, stick around. I'll get into all the details right now. In terms of the material that I'm going to use to build this storage system, there's obviously a lot of different choices out there, and I'm going to use something that I used last time on the Africa Jeep. It worked really well, it's pretty budget friendly, and it's really, really light, which I think is really important. And that is using some aluminium tubing. This is 1-inch square tube. I just bought a few lengths of it from the hardware store. And then you buy these plastic corner connectors as well. Here in Australia, we can buy these things from Bunnings, which is our big national hardware store. Over in the US, there are a few retailers that sell them. You can get them online. I'll throw a link in the description for anyone that's interested. But these things are really handy because it means you just cut your aluminium to length and then push these into the corners, and immediately you can start making boxes and square shapes. And you can see the connectors come in different varieties. This one's obviously a different corner than this one. There are regular corners, there are all kinds of different versions. And my local store's running short on them. I just bought them all. Hopefully more are coming soon. But the idea being, I can just start cutting this material to length, use the corner connectors, and pretty quickly I'm gonna have a box. I'll have like a little down section to match the contour of the floor. All of that will go really quickly and easily. So it's certainly not the cheapest way to go, and if you're a really skilled woodworker, maybe you would build the whole thing out of wood. But for me, this framing system, it's simple and it works. I really like that. In terms of what I'll actually cover them with, last time I used plywood to go around Africa for 3 years. I didn't know if that would be strong enough. I didn't know if it would handle kind of the mud and the dust and all of that. And it did really well. There's no reason not to use plywood again. I will have a look. There are some like plastic options these days. I'm thinking about using sheets of aluminium just to make it strong, but also still keep it light. So I haven't actually decided yet what I'm going to skin the cabinets with, but whatever I use, I'm going to cover the whole thing in black carpet anyway. So it's kind of irrelevant. You're not going to see it. As long as it's strong and light, those are the criteria that actually matter. And in my usual fashion, I don't need to make that decision right now, and it's kind of easier for me not to. I just need to hurry up and get building the actual framework. In terms of what I actually need in this space and what I'm going to design, Dad and I have been scratching our heads and looking at this for about an hour last night and some other days as well. One of the first things I've done is I've put a piece of marine plywood on the rear here of the Jeep. And this is just to keep everything covered. There was a lot of electronics behind there. I'm going to eventually cover that in black carpet, so you won't see it at all. It doesn't really matter that some of those holes are a bit bigger than they need to be. But that sort of gives me a baseline that I can build off. When I had a good look at the floor, there's some sort of ripples here and a few things that constrain the proportions a little bit. And so I was tempted at first to build a box that fills this entire space. I've got the driver's seat back even further back than where I would have it for driving. So if someone much taller than me wants to drive, at least they'll be able to. So this kind of constrains my proportions. When I close this rear door, I have to make sure that the armrest here won't hit anything that I build. But the basic idea is a big square box sitting right here that has a door on this side. So you would have to open this rear door to open this door. I'm thinking it will be somewhat about the height of the front seat, and probably have some bungee cords or something on top, so I could even put cargo on top of it, maybe light things like clothes. And the idea is that it is a bit of a security lockbox. It's going to have my valuables in it. And again, if I cover the whole thing in black carpet, it's going to be sort of hard to see or sort of hard to understand what it is. And a few other things that I'd like to integrate as well. I do know I've got a secondary battery that I would like to have here somewhere. I've got the big solar charge controller and DC to DC charger. That needs to be here. I also would like to have a charging station for all the various chargers that I have. For all of my cameras, for my laptop, for my drone, all of those have little battery packs that have to constantly be charged so I can swap them out. All of that functionality I need to have in this box, which makes it hard to build because you have so many constraints, you don't really know where to start or, what's the best way to go about things. And something I'm trying really hard to keep in mind, when I built my Africa Jeep, my friend Ian said to me at the time, Dan, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be good enough. And I think this is really critical because on a project like this, no doubt there are 1,000 different ways to go about this. There's different materials, there's different approaches, there's drawers, there's slides, there's shelves. All of those would work perfectly, depending on your individual needs, depending on your budget, depending on your timeline. And as much as I'm enjoying this build, and I do like building vehicles, this isn't the point of what I'm doing. I don't want this to take another 3 months and have the ultimate storage system. That's not what I want at all. I want this build to be done in about 4 weeks so I can hit the road and have adventures. The only reason I'm building this vehicle is to get out and have adventures. So there's no point spending all this extra time building it, spending way more money and way more time that I could be using to get out there and have adventures. So I have to remember in the back of my mind, doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to make the ultimate storage system. I have to make a storage system that's going to work for me and my needs and keep it within budget. Something else that I really want to remember too is keep it lightweight. If I can, where possible, use materials that are going to make it light. And so with that in mind, at first I thought I was going to mount my secondary battery inside the cabinet. And I actually have the battery here, and we're going to talk about it at a later date, so we won't go into details on it right now. But I have it here just so that I can get its dimensions and think about where does it sit. I'm probably not going to put it down in the passenger footwell here, just because it's so low, maybe a little bit of water will get in, or mud or dust or whatever. So I'm already thinking up a little bit higher, kind of at the back of where the rear seat normally would be. Same thing goes for the charge controller and the DC to DC charger. I want to mount it, I think, on the back wall. And so both of them together kind of make sense, and I'm already thinking now to keep them outside of the cabinet. So now the cabinet is actually going to be a bit smaller. And that'll leave some space probably behind the cabinet that technically isn't inside the cabinet, but that'll be a perfect place to stuff things like canvas bags or clothes or shoes. I mean, there's 1,000 options for things that can go in there that they'll be stored inside the Jeep, but they won't actually be inside the storage cabinet. That works pretty well for me. So at this stage, I've got these cardboard boxes in here, and I've got a straight edge, I've got a tape measure, I've got a pen and paper. I really am just moving things around and trying to think about what will it look like, what will it feel like. If I have the box roughly about where this piece of wood is, now I get a sense of how much spare space is down here. What will I use that for? Is it worth trying to make an angle on the box to use up that space? Or do I prefer that space to be outside the box? Like I said, there's 1,000 different ways you could go about this, all of which could be really functional and really useful. I just have to build the one that's going to work for me. And the way I like to operate, I could spend a month trying to design this or draw diagrams or take endless tape measurements, but that feels like a lot of work. I kind of lend myself more to, why don't I just start building it, and I'll build it to fit the space I have. The contours here in the floor, the limitations of the seat and the armrest, you could spend months trying to measure all of that, and then when it comes to build it, find out that whatever you designed didn't fit. So what I did with my Africa Jeep, and what I'm going to do with this one, is simply build it to fit. So instead of trying to take tape measurements for the next week, I can just come in here with material, put it in where it's supposed to be, draw a line on it, and then cut it and know that it will fit, because I effectively just measured it from the space available to me instead of from some sort of diagram or drawing or something like that. So for me, getting into it and starting work is the best way to go. I have a decent idea in my head of roughly what it's going to look like. I really do think it's going to be a big square box with a door in this side, and the devil will be in the details here with the contour of the floor and how the battery and the charge controller and stuff fit in and have their own space. But all of that is to say, it's time to get stuck in and start building. All right, so it's a couple of days later and Dad and I have been hard at work on this thing. We made a whole bunch of progress off camera. I'll show you where I'm at and then I'll bring you along for the rest of the build. There was a lot of hard decisions here and I kept knocking the camera over and it was just really difficult to film in this tight space. So you can see what we've done. One of the first decisions we made was to pull the rear carpet out. And you know, I ummed and ahed over this decision for a while. And then as soon as I'd done it, I was really happy. Over here where I'm sitting in the rear passenger seat, we still will have this rubber mat and we can add in automotive carpet wherever it makes sense. But in terms of being able to mount the box down, I think having no carpet's a big advantage. You can see I've still got the auxiliary battery here. This is where I think it will go. And what we've done is made a frame out of the aluminium tube and the corner connectors. And it is currently bolted into the Jeep. And so in the back corners here, I made these right angle brackets out of aluminium and I've picked up, this is one of the bolts from the rear seat that would have been in this spot. Same story over here, an aluminium bracket using the rear seat bolt. And then at the front, it's resting on legs that will hold the weight down, but we really struggled to find a way to actually hold the cabinet down to the floor. So what I made is this strap. This is actually steel. I really wanted this to be strong so that this bend here won't straighten itself out. And I did actually drill a hole in the floor of the Jeep. And interestingly enough, where that drain plug is, the floor of the Jeep is actually 2 layers. I don't understand why. This one right here is only 1 layer. I can actually just see the ground through that. Whereas over there, that drain plug has a separate layer. So this bolt actually just goes through 1 layer of sheet metal and then there's another layer underneath. But you'll see this thing, I can't move it at all. It is really, really sturdy. So this is the foundation of what the cabinet will be. And again, there was a lot of compromises here. There was a lot of decisions around how long to make it, how wide to make it. And now I'm really trying to decide how actually tall to make it, whether it comes up about here somewhere, about the level of the seat, about the level of the glass is what I'm thinking. And I've been playing around with a tape measure, trying to figure out if I'll still be able to get it out of the Jeep, out of the other side door. And one of the things I did too is I removed the wiring and the limiter strap from that rear door, and it's just folded all the way around onto the front door. So that opening now is as big as it can possibly be. Nifty little feature of the Gladiator and the Wrangler. But yeah, now the plan is to build it up vertically. So I need to have 4 uprights, cut them all at the same length, and then just build another square using the corner connectors. And you'll see this really does go together like Lego. And now I kind of don't even need to use my brain, because once I've decided how long the uprights are, I cut 4 of them identically, I put them on, and for the square that will be the top, it's exactly the same dimensions as this square down below. And so in a funny sense, I don't have to actually think about what I'm doing. I just have to duplicate this lower square and make an upper square, and I'll be good to go. And then we've decided we're going to line the whole thing with plywood, and then we're actually going to cover it in automotive carpet anyway. So even my woodworking skills being what they are, the thing doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough. We'll have an access door on the other side. We may have an access door on this side. We haven't fully decided that one yet. But again, these are all decisions that I find it really hard to try and make them up front. It's just too many decisions and I get like stuck in analysis paralysis, which is actually what I've been doing most of yesterday and today. So instead, hurry up and build it, get it happening, and make those decisions only when they need to be made. Whether or not there's an access door here, it doesn't change what I need to do right now, so I should just hurry up and do what I need to do. So that is plenty enough preamble and rambling. Let's get into actually building this cabinet and turn it into a nice big square box. All right, now I've cut all the pieces to length. It's just a matter of putting it all together exactly like Lego. And so I've got 4 uprights here. Right now I have the square in the same orientation it'll be in the Jeep, just to help my brain. And basically all I do is push them onto the connector, and then I found these ones are a little bit stiff, and so I've actually been tapping them with a block of wood to make sure that they go all the way on. And so I give it a little bit of a tap, and that's it. And because they're so solid like that, I don't even think I'm going to put Tech screws in them or anything. I'm just going to say that is strong enough for my needs. There is no chance any of this will come apart, especially after I cover the whole thing in plywood. So just like that, I have my uprights. You can see already it's quickly turning into a box. And now I've got my corner pieces. I'm just going to put a piece on every corner and then connect all of those with the other pieces I cut to length. And the order that you put it together doesn't matter so much, but I kind of prefer to build a nice square and then just put it on in one hit. So I'll do that now. And that's it, I've just tapped the cabinet together. So I'll spin it back around like it goes in the Jeep, and that's it there. This is the front edge behind the driver's seat on the Australia side. And now I get my first look at kind of how big the interior volume is. And this thing's actually pretty big. It's kind of like 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. So what's that, 6 cubic feet of space. Someone can figure that out for me in liters or meters. But yeah, this is starting to look like a cabinet. Now I'm actually interested to see, will I be able to get it through the door here and get it inside the Jeep? So let's find out. So there we go, the cabinet is in the Jeep, and it's funny, you know, I was thinking it was going to wind up pretty small because of the space that's wasted at the front and the back, and I had to leave clearance for the armrest on the door. But now that it's in here, I'm like, whoa, this thing is actually big. I mean, that's an enormous amount of volume here inside this cupboard. And I'll have to start thinking about, am I going to put a shelf in it? Maybe a little shelf here for some charging equipment, somewhere special to put my laptop. I don't actually know, I don't have a plan yet. So I'm going to spend a bit of time looking at it, thinking about what I want to do. And then next step will be start lining this thing with plywood and get it locked in. Just keep moving forward. Think about a door, probably going to have a diagonal cutout in the actual door so that it misses the Jeep tub here. And then maybe the whole area will be a door, or maybe only the top part needs to be a door. Again, have to start thinking about it, start solving all these issues. All right, after lots and back and forward and discussion, Dad and I pulled it out, and we've actually added a second row of support to put a shelf in the middle of this cabinet. So I debated long and hard, should the shelf be near the top, near the bottom? Should I make it overall taller or lower? There's a million different ways to skin this cat, and this is what I've come up with. So there will be a shelf in about the middle. I think it's going to be the full depth of the cabinet, because otherwise things are going to fall off the top shelf and fall down into the bottom area. So this is what we've come up with. I'm super happy with it. It's bolted in, it's extremely sturdy, which is great. And so this has been actually really difficult. I'm finding it hard to sort of design and build and film as I go along. But next step is cover this thing in plywood. And then we're trying to get our hands on some automotive carpet right now. It seems like everywhere is sold out. It's just, there isn't any to be had. So fingers crossed I can still get some so I can cover the whole thing in carpet once it's covered in plywood. But yeah, this is really coming together. I'm happy with how it's going. So thanks very much again for watching. If you did enjoy the video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Plenty more to come on the build of my Overland Jeep Gladiator to get it ready to go around Australia for 12 months. And if you'd like to get these videos early, if you'd like exclusive behind the scenes content, check out over on Patreon. There's a link in the description. That's where I'm sharing all of this stuff for my supporters on Patreon. If you want to find out where I'm going to sleep, If you want to find out what else is coming on the build, parts yet to arrive from the US, all of that stuff is over on Patreon, so check that out, link in the description. Thanks again for watching, stay safe out there, and maybe I'll bump into you on the road.